Good day, fitness students. Today I'm coming to you with anatomy once again. I'm moving to the next section, which is the muscle system. A very interesting presentation that unfortunately we need to grasp. You need to remember, as a fitness student, one of the things you have to know is the muscles, the makeup of the muscles in your body, because most of our work has to do with the exercising of the muscles. And therefore, for you to exercise or to become a good trainer, you have to know how the muscle makeup, or how the body is made, or how the muscles are grouped up. So this is a very short section whereby we'll look at the various muscles that make up your body. Remember, we have done the skeletal system previously, and now we are looking at the next system, which is very important for the qualification that you are doing. So I want you to come along and join me as we embark on this journey. Once again, just like you analyzed the skeletal system, if you want to look at the muscle system, you have to look at it once again in two views. There's no way you can analyze the muscle system. The first view, you have to look at the front view. By now, I'm sure you are familiar of the posterior and the anterior view. Anterior view is the front view of your body, and the posterior view is the back view of your body. Once again, we'll begin with the front view, just like we did with your skeletal system. The front view, basically, you look at the muscles that are showing when you are facing forward. Now, the best way to learn muscles is to group them. Don't learn muscles as individual muscles. You have to group. The grouping of muscles, what it means you have to look at the shoulder muscles, look at the arm, which is divided into bicep, tricep, and forearm. Look at the chest muscles, you can say your upper body. Look at your abdominal muscles. Look at your legs. Legs you can divide into your quads, your hamstring, as well as your lower leg, which is your gastrocnemius and your soleus. So I want us to begin from the top, and I must say to you that there is just no way you can learn the muscles without having to memorize them. I cannot give you any form of a shortcut. The best way to learn these muscles is to memorize them. I remember when I was doing my anatomy as a first year, one of the things I used to do after my anatomy classes, I would go to the library and find these thick books on anatomy, and I'll read them. And most of the big books, they were even better than my textbooks. But sometimes the textbooks, some of the muscles were not so much in color and clear. So I fell in love with the subject of anatomy by just reading and reading and reading and reading and studying. Like I said, there is no easy way out, there is no shortcut. Many of the muscles, they've got very strange names that are not linked to anything. You just have to learn and memorize it as it is. And of course, as a very good trainer, you would need to mention and make use of these muscles. Even when you are drawing your fitness programs, you have to make use of the names, which is the right terminology that every trainer needs to use. Now, I'll begin with the shoulder. You remember in our skeletal system presentation, we did speak of the anatomical names and the common or the lay names that everybody uses. Now, if you look at the shoulder is not a small muscle. And I want you to know that the name shoulder is not an anatomical name of this muscle. The anatomical name of the shoulder is called the deltoid. That's the shoulder. We refer to the shoulder as the deltoid. Now, if you look at your muscle system there on the slides, which I would really suggest that whenever you are watching these videos, you must have your slides with you, which I've sent to you via email. If you look at the shoulder, just on top of the shoulder, we see an important muscle which is very big. It starts right at the front and it goes all the way to the back, which is called the trapezius. Now, I know there are neck muscles that are there, which the key muscle for your exam that you need to know is the sternocleidomastoid. That's your major neck muscle. I'm sure you can see it there. It's probably the muscle with the longest name. The rest of the muscles, such as your facial muscles, we don't dwell much on those muscles because they don't really have much to do with the work that we do as trainers. So you can start learning from the sternocleidomastoid and come down to the trapezius. The trapezius, you can see, is your muscle that runs over there. That's your trapezius. You need to know how to pronounce these names and also know how to write them down. It's called the trapezius. And following the trapezius, you've got the deltoid. The deltoid, like I said, you can say it's your shoulder. That's the muscle that is over there. Now, coming down, you've got your arm. Now, your arm, which is referred to as your biceps. Now, there are a few clues and keys that you need to know. When you see the name bicep means there are two major muscles that make up your bicep muscle. Now, these muscles are the bicep brachii. At least you've got a clue that it's a double B, it's a BB, and the brachialis. So these are the two muscles that make up your bicep muscle. So in an exam, if you are asked a question to mention the muscles in your forearm, if you say bicep, you'll probably get 1 mark. But if you say bicep brachii and brachialis, then you qualify to get the 2 marks that is there. Now, the forearm, once again, we don't dwell much on the forearm muscles. However, you can learn those muscles because as a trainer, you need to know how to exercise the forearm. There are specific exercises that a trainer should know in terms of the forearm because the forearm is also, there are big muscles there that you need to know how to train. Coming down, you've got the pelvic muscles there. You've got two main muscles that you need to know that you've got two. It's just a small group. You've got the iliopsoas and then you've got the pectineus muscle there. So learn those two muscles because they work for you when you do your hip flexors and your hip extension exercises. Usually you will be training on those muscles, which we'll talk about the different exercises later. And you'll get to understand how exercises or how you can exercise each of these muscles. That's why it is important for you as a trainer to know the names of the muscles because you cannot train a muscle that you do not know. And now going to your thigh, once again, we don't refer to that muscle as a thigh. We refer to that muscle as your quadricep muscle. Now, your quadricep muscle has got 4 major muscles. That's why it's called a quad. Quad means 4. As you can see there, you've got 3 muscles that are mentioned. And I see that the sartorius, which is the longest muscle in your body, you can see it's mentioned on the other side of this picture. Now, if you look at your quadricep, which is 4 muscles there, the first muscle is your vastus litoris, which you can see, and you've got your rectus femoris, which you can see, and you've got your vastus medularis, which you can see. And then if you go to the other side of your leg, you've got your sartorius. Now, like I said, when you study anatomy, do not use one source because some pictures are not so clear, are not so good. Like this picture is not 100% perfect. Now, to see all the 4 muscles that make up the quad, you may need to use a different picture other than this one. But now let's go back to these 4 muscles. I want to give you some clues and keys so that you can remember these for your exams. The first one you see is your rectus femoris. Now, this muscle is named using the femur. Remember that bone, the longest bone in your body, which is your thigh, is the femur. So this muscle is called the rectus of the femur, if you want to know. Rectus femoris, you can say, is the rectus of the femur. That's how I used to memorize this muscle. And the next one is the vastus lateralis. Now, always remember, lateral means, you see when we do the anatomical positions, lateral means outside in anatomy. Medial means inside. So this one is named vastus lateralis, meaning the vastus that is outside. The other one is called vastus medialis, means the vastus that is inside. And of course, if you go over, the fourth muscle in your leg is called sartorius. Now sartorius, as you can see, it begins right there by your hip fold, and then it goes all the way down to your knee inside, meaning medially. Now sartorius, one of the things we're told about the sartorius is the longest muscle in your body. Always remember that in your exam. Sartorius is the longest muscle in length. There is no muscle as long as the sartorius. As you can see, it begins right there and then it goes all the way down medial to your knee. That's how long that muscle is. And going down, you've got your lower leg. Your lower leg, there are two muscle groups that you need to remember, which we'll look at them when we turn this guy around. Is your gastrocnemius, which is usually known as the calf. The calf, we don't use that name. In anatomy, we use the name gastrocnemius. And of course, below the gastrocnemius, you can see your soleus there. Now, I want us to go up. I've left out two major muscle groups up there, which the first one is your chest. We don't refer to it as a chest, we refer to it as your pecs, which they are divided into two. Chest is called pec, divided into two. Number one, pectoralis major is the big chest muscle that you see. And the pectoralis minor, which is not very much visible, especially on this picture. Like I said, to look at these two muscles, you perhaps need to make use of another source. And I'm sure I did communicate with you that perhaps you should get the app. There are fantastic app on anatomy whereby you can zoom in, whereby you can basically manipulate the picture to show you what you want to see. Coming down, you've got your abdominal muscle, which is your stomach. Now you will see when you begin to design exercise programs that your abdominal muscles are very big. One of the big muscle groups you can find in your body. And you've got four divisions there. Under abdominal, you can see that the first thing you've got is your rectus abdominis. The second one, which you can see by the name external obliques, meaning obliques that are external on the side. And the third one is internal obliques, more inside, the obliques that are inside. Now remember, the obliques are the side of your stomach. We refer to those muscles as obliques. And then going down there on the side, we call that the transverse. So once again, like I said earlier on, for you to learn these muscles very well, you probably need to break your body into these groups and also learn them as individuals. So you will need a good picture that is better than this one. Now I want us to look at the same picture. I want us to turn it around now, which is figure 11.8b in your presentation. Now, if you look at the figure 11.8b, that's the posterior view of the muscle system. Now, if you look at the posterior, some of the things are repeated. Of course, I'll start from the neck because the sternocleidomastoid doesn't show so well. But the trapezius muscle shows very nicely because you can see the trapezius muscle is at the back. You can see as much as it shows when you are standing your anterior position. But the best way to analyze the trapezius is to look at the posterior view of the muscle system. Now, coming down, you can see the tricep muscle. Look at the tricep muscle. The tricep muscle is also another major group that you need to be aware of. It's called tricep because there are three muscle group muscles there, which I want you to go and read. Very important for your exam once again. And also you've got your forearm. They've given us the back view of those muscles, which I did say to you that they are not so important for your exam, but you need to learn them as a trainer and know exactly how you would exercise those muscles. And once again, look at the deltoid. The deltoid is shown from the back. It gives us a very nice posterior view. Earlier on, we looked only at the anterior view of the deltoid. And then we've got very important muscles there, which we're going to look at in the next slide or two, which we call them the rotator cuff muscles. Rotator cuff muscles are the four muscles that are attached on your scapula. Remember, we said the scapula is your shoulder blade. There are four key muscles there that are very important for your exam. I'm not going to dwell much on those four muscles now because this picture we are looking at does not show them very well. But in the next slide or two, we'll look at them and also look at the movements of the scapula, which is also very important for your exam. And the next one, you look at the rhomboids. The rhomboids, very big muscle, as you can see. And also we look at the neighbor of the rhomboid, which is the latissimus dorsi. We refer to it as the lats. Very, very important muscles for your exam. And of course, you need to know exactly what exercise can affect these muscles. In fact, the different exercises that can exercise these muscles. Because if you look at the exercises, there's more than 4 exercises for each and every muscle group, which is something that we'll talk about when we do our exercise program designs. Coming down, you're looking at the glutes. The glute is what is known as the bum. Once again, we don't refer to the glute as the bum as anatomy students. We refer to the bum as the glute. Now, the bum or the glute is divided into 2 major muscles, as you can see. The first one up there is glute, meaning, or some people, they refer to it as a small glute. Just like the pectoralis minor and the pectoralis major, you've got your glute mini, which is the small area of your glutes up there, and you've got the glute max, which is the glute that we see, meaning max, the big glute that we see when you are standing, or what we see on the picture there. And then going down, you're looking at the thigh. The thigh, now we have the posterior view. Remember, we looked at the anterior view earlier on, whereby we look at the quadricep muscles. Now we are looking at the back, which is called the hamstring. Now on your hamstring, you can see the key muscles there are your adductor magnus, you've got your gracilis, you've got your bicep femoris. Once again, we have a clue there. Bicep femoris is the bicep of the femur. Remember, you have a bicep of the arm. Now we are talking about the bicep of the femur, which is called the bicep femoris. Then you've got 2 other muscles there, the semitendinosus and the semimembranosus. So very important strange names that you need to know. And finally, right at the bottom, you've got your gastrocnemius, which we said, known as the calf, but anatomically, we refer to that muscle as your gastrocnemius. And of course, below the gastrocnemius, you've got your muscle called the soleus. Once again, do yourself a favor, go on the anatomy app and learn these muscles further. It will help you to understand them more. The next slide, I want us to look at what I promised you. Rotator cuff muscles, very, very important muscles for your back. Very, very important muscles also for your exam. Now, your back, meaning your back, I'm referring to your scapula or your shoulder blades. There are 4 muscles that control a lot of your upper back movements. These 4 muscles are coming up in your exam. We refer to them as the rotator cuff muscles. The first one is the supraspinatus. The second one is the infraspinatus. The third one is the teres minor. And the fourth one, I don't see clearly on that slide. We call it the teres major. Please learn these muscles for your exam. Like you can see, they are nicely paired up. Supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, and teres major. Once again, you may need to look at another picture better than this one that will show the teres major, because it's not shown clearly on this picture. The next slide, we look at the movements of the subscapular. Once again, extremely important for your exam as well as your exercise programs. As a trainer, you need to know the basic movements of the subscapular. Your picture there shows us 6 movements, but I'll focus on only 4 major. I think your picture there is included under movements that are in between. But for me and for your exam and for what you need to know for your exercise programs is the 4 movements. Number 1 is the elevation. As you can see, the first picture on top there on your left is the elevation of the scapula. It's basically like that. So for example, when you do shoulder shrugs, you are elevating your scapula. And of course, you see depression of the scapula. You elevate and depress, elevate and depress. And then the next one you need to learn, you see the abduction, meaning ABD. You can easily get confused about abduction and adduction. So here we've got abduction, which is the same as the protraction of the scapula. Protraction, that's when you do a movement like that. You protract the scapula, meaning the distance between your scapulas, it extends. And then finally, you've got what we call the retraction of the scapula. That's when now the 2 scapulas, they come together. For example, when you are doing your upright rowing exercises, the subscapulars, they retract or they adduct. Once again, you may need to look at other clearer pictures than this one to understand the movements of the scapula. The next slide, I want us to look at the muscle, we call it the muscle terms. You know, my classmates didn't like anatomy because there were so many things that you had to memorize. But I love anatomy, I still love it because of these strange terms. Muscle terms, the first thing we need to know there is agonist muscles. Now in anatomy, what is the meaning of the term agonist? Now agonist means the muscles that are responsible for the movement. For example, if I'm doing a bicep curl, the agonist muscle are my bicep muscles. So agonist muscles are the muscles that are responsible for the movement itself, or the muscles that are being trained when I'm doing that movement. If I'm doing that movement, I'm training my bicep, meaning the agonist muscle is my bicep. The second one is the antagonist. I'm sure you've heard the word antagonist referred to as an opposition or an enemy. If I'm doing my bicep curl, the agonist muscle is my bicep muscle, and the opposition is my tricep, meaning the antagonist muscles. So you can apply this everywhere. Usually the opposite muscle is the antagonist muscle, of course, depending on the exercise that you are doing. If I'm doing an overhead tricep extension, my tricep muscles now, they work as an agonist muscle, and my bicep muscle, they work as an antagonist muscle. So I always say to my students, don't memorize it all the time. Sometimes you need to learn to understand the movement and get common sense out of it. The third term there is the synergists. Synergists are basically the muscles that help to stabilize the movement. For example, if I'm doing my bicep curl, my shoulder muscles, they keep the arm stable. So I can say my shoulder muscles, they also work as the synergist muscles. So once again, anatomy, you need to go and read. You cannot depend on my presentation. The more you read it, the more you understand it. And the more you read it, the more you have it in your mind. That's basically how it works. The first or the next important thing now is what is called the difference between muscle insertion and muscle origin. In anatomy, we need to know, where does the muscle originate and where does it end? Insertion would mean where it ends. Origin would mean where it begins. As you can see in your presentation, it says the insertion is usually distal. Now, the meaning of the word distal, it means further away from the center of the body. Remember that for your exam. And if you look at it, it says, whilst origin is proximal, the meaning of the word, it means closer. Proximal means closer to the center of the body. So that's very important. So insertion is distal or further away from the center of the body, whereas origin is proximal, meaning it's closer to the center of the body. And we'll look at a number of examples just now. If you look at the next slide, you've got a very nice picture there of your rhomboid muscle. Remember, the rhomboid muscles are at the back. We can see that the rhomboid muscle, the origin is there by T1 and T5. Can you see? We did say that the origin is closer to the center of the body. And you can see that the insertion is right there by your scapula because the insertion is further away from the center of the body. So you can do this with any muscle in your body. We are given another example of your pectoralis major. You can see that the origin, it says clavicle, your sternum. You can see the origin is right there at your sternum, and the insertion is right there by your humerus bone, if you can see the picture in color. And I hope you enjoyed the presentation. In the next slides, I'm going to talk to you about the spinal deformities. Very short presentation, but I believe that you're going to enjoy it. Thank you.